Our MC in this story is an introverted art student who prefers to keep his head down and stay out of trouble. That all changes when he crosses paths with Nagatoro, a sharp-tongued, mischievous girl with a twisted sense of humor. From the moment they meet, she zeroes in on his weaknesses and turns his quiet life into a living nightmare. Nagatoro teases him mercilessly, calling him pathetic, mocking him and dragging him into embarrassing situations that leave him blushing redder than a tomato, and stumbling over his words. She seems to take a sick pleasure in seeing him squirm, pushing him further with each lewd insult and snide comment. But as much as Nagatoro's relentless bullying puts him on edge, there's something about their strange dynamic that keeps him coming back for more. Behind her playful cruelty, there's a hint of something deeper, an unholy connection that leaves Senpai's tiny brain confused and intrigued. The line between torment and affection, and what starts as a one-sided game of humiliation slowly develops into something more complex. After the end of classes, an introverted virgin second-year high schooler walks into the library expecting to find it empty, only to discover a group of 4 girls actually went there to chat. He walks in regardless, and the girls go on talking about boys. He tries to concentrate on his homework. However, after one of the girls from the group got closer to him in order to look for a book, he caused the pages of a manga he drew to fall on the floor. The girl picks the pages up and shows her bullying powers. Being spotted and mercilessly criticized by the girls, he cringes until one of them gets a text from a friend, prompting them all to go except for one, who introduced herself as a first-year student, thus calling him her senpai, and commenting that the manga protagonist, whom she identified as Senpai's self-insert, is pitiful. Sitting opposite him on the desk, she reads out some of the lines from the manga and mocks him so much that he is too embarrassed to speak like a coherent human being. She then stands up and motions for him to play along as she acts out one of the scenes from his manga, showing him that a pathetic loser like himself will never be able to perform such a manly act as caressing the female lead's hair due to a virgin-looking character like him being unable to. The girl then called his character flat, reducing him to tears and commenting on his behavior as creepy. However, before she goes home, she wipes his tears away with her handkerchief, cheerfully apologizes, and leaves it to him as a present. He drops to the floor of the library and starts weeping like a hopeless toddler, lamenting that a lower classman made him cry. After having returned home, the boy is haunted in his dream by the humiliations endured by the girl he met previously that day. The following afternoon in school, the girl approaches him in the room of the art club he was part of, and he gives her back her laundered handkerchief. However, she follows him inside the room, offering him to be his model as an apology for having bullied him the previous day. The boy tries to refuse, but he is soon convinced out of sheer and constant embarrassment after the girl teased him, promising to give him a prize if he made a good sketch of her. However, all he managed to do was an unfinished sketch which blurred out her thighs because he was too much of an inexperienced virgin to draw a girl's thighs. The girl asks him to close his eyes so he can receive his reward. He closes his eyes, thinking he'll get a free kiss from a hot chick, but instead, she gives him a flick on the nose, laughing at him for expecting a kiss. Senpai tries to cover his face, in order not to show he was crying, but the girl pulls his skinny arms apart as she mocks him for how weak he is, which causes him to cry again like an unloved child. She seems to be unbothered and proceeds to kindly wipe his tears once more. Later, walking back home together, she teases Senpai repeatedly, first asking him to go out with her, and after laughing at him for believing she was serious, she starts stating that no girl would ask him something similar for real. Then, seeing he didn't react, the girl asked him why he didn't get angry, pointing out she was really mean to him. However, Senpai remembers that he was bullied since early childhood, thus being accustomed to it. After the girl suggested he actually has a crush on her, he blushes redder than planet Mars, and tells her to put that aside and admits that despite finding her annoying, he doesn't dislike talking with her. Smiling like a deranged mentally ill person, the girl tells him to stop calling her Miss, and then after he asked for her name by stammering like a fool, she finally introduces herself as Nagatoro. Nagatoro storms into the art club room with a hula hoop as if she owns the place. She asks Senpai to join her by slipping in, however. As he bends down to try, he accidentally sees her panties, causing Nagatoro to blush and hit him with the hula hoop. She panics hastily and calls him a pervert. Later, on a stormy afternoon, Senpai eats some yakisoba alone and then prepares to read an erotic manga he bought. However, Nagatoro enters the room, asking him to show her what he was reading, much to his embarrassment. After she managed to take it from his hands by force, accusing him to be a pervert, Senpai tried to justify himself, saying the erotic scenes were just a bonus, and he was actually interested in reading the vampire story. Intrigued, Nagatoro read the manga, finding the story amusing, and jokes about one of the vampiress's victims being similar to Senpai. However, she reassured him that being a worthless virgin, he wouldn't have to worry even if caught by a vampire, because he won't turn into ghoul if bitten. Blushing, Senpai claims that she can't be sure of his virginity without being a vampire, causing Nagatoro to ask him to try giving him a bite to see if she's a vampire or not. The sad little boy weakly tried to protest, but she managed to easily pin him to the ground and stops, ironically, only due to the smell of garlic in his breath. As he tries to stand, she jumps again on top of him, causing them both to fall to the ground with her right hand landing on his groin, which then causes his eyes to roll back. That evening, walking back home, Nagatoro breaks the embarrassing silence by asking Senpai if her touch on his little boy cannon excited him. He refused to answer, and then she asks if he wants her to touch it again. Without letting him stammer out his answer, she smiles like a lewd stepsister on heat and moves towards him as if she's going to grab his cannon, but she grabs his ribs instead with a mischievous smile. That night, thinking back on what happened, Senpai gets an unwanted activity on his cannon. The following day, Nagatoro proposes to Senpai to play a game in which a player had to guess where the other person's nipples are and then poke them from above the clothes. Senpai refused, since he believes poking Nagatoro's nipples would make him a sexual molester, prompting the girl to tell him she would be the only player, and if she lost in finding his nipples, then the game would be over. The prize would be a special ticket, allowing the one who possesses it to order the other to do anything they wanted. Nagatoro initially points at the wrong spot on his chest, but she twists her fingers and almost brings the weakling to his knees. She manages to win the game, and tells Senpai that she will keep the ticket and plans to use it one day in the future, once he forgets about it. Scared, Senpai tries to play in turn and guess where her nipples were, causing conspicuous embarrassment in Nagatoro. As Senpai comes closer to her to try and massage her pinpoints, fortunately for her, a text comes in and she uses the excuse of the text message to run away, saying that she'd forgotten about a date with her friends. Later, Senpai goes to a restaurant far from the road to school in order to continue his manga alone in peace and quiet, and away from the brown tsundere. However, Nagatoro and one of her friends enter the place along with two boys. He watches from a distance and thinks that Nagatoro will turn down the guys the way she has been taunting him, but to his surprise, she turns down both of them with a bored and cold expression he had never seen before, without being aggressive or bullying them. Both guys leave to the bathroom with what is left of their self-esteem, and as Nagatoro's friend comes back, she scolds her for continuing to try setting her up with boys. Walking back home, Senpai asks himself if he is the only one Nagatoro bullies, and if so, why? Nagatoro, the confusing girl, reaches for him and starts mocking his way to walk, saying that she could recognize his F-rank silhouette from afar. Senpai tries to ask her about why she treats him differently, but because his balls are made of plastic and not steel, he is ultimately unable to do it, and they simply walk home together. The next morning, Nagatoro offers Senpai to model for him, and after he refuses, she begins to shamelessly strip down, causing him to panic and turn red. However, after she took off her last piece of clothing, she reveals that she was actually wearing a swimming suit, and then proceeds to blast him about how much of a degenerate pervert he is. Caught in the middle of a storm while they were walking back home, Nagatoro and Senpai are forced to hide under a gazebo. There, she teases him not to look at her because her uniform had turned see-through. However, remembering her previous prank, Senpai believes she is talking about her swimsuit and thus looks at her, only to discover she was telling the truth, and catching a glimpse of her packaged melons beneath the soaked shirt. After a quick moment of embarrassment from both of them, Nagatoro starts to tease Senpai again, calling him a pervert. As they continue speaking, they both sneeze and then realize they'll probably have to get home. Nagatoro asks him how far his house is, and he describes a location that is far away. The storm gets worse, causing her to invite him to her house since hers was closer until the weather got better. At first, he is quite nervous at the idea of meeting Nagatoro's family. As they arrive, he sees her parents' shoes on the doorway and is worried about whether her parents would tease him relentlessly like their daughter. However, she reassures him that her folks weren't at home and, surprisingly, behaves like a good hostess, giving Senpai some of her brother's clothes to change into, a towel to clean himself off. As he tries to clean himself, the useless degenerate starts having thoughts about using the same towel as her, but she comes in and tells him that she uses a different one. She then makes some tea for them to drink in her room. Noticing how uncomfortable he seemed at being in a girl's room for the first time in his innocent virgin life, Nagatoro suggests that they play one of her brother's video games. As they played, however, Senpai revealed to be far more skilled than her, since he is a shut-in otaku without a life. He triggers her competitiveness and prompts her to cheat several times by disturbing him while he was holding the joystick. Eventually, however, they both have a good time. In the evening, before going home, Senpai thanked Nagatoro for the afternoon, and the latter replied that they should do it again sometime. He agrees, but tells her not to cheat the next time they do. The following day, Senpai walks into the school cafeteria to have his usual lonely meal. However, there are no tables left, and he is too embarrassed to ask to sit with someone. Seeing him, Nagatoro invites him to sit at the table, on which she was eating alongside her friends Gamo-chan and Yoshi. Senpai decides to accept the invitation, as he doesn't really have much of a choice. However, as soon as he sits down, the two girls immediately start to ask if he was Nagatoro's boyfriend, prompting the girl to play along with it and answer that they were going out. Intrigued, yet a bit jealous, Nagatoro's friends started to mock and tease Senpai, just like their friends usually did. However, the latter surprisingly stood up for him. Senpai stands up in the cafeteria, drawing the attention of everyone, and says that he is not Nagatoro's boyfriend. He is about to say something else, but he runs out of confidence midway and sits back down. Seeing his apparent cowardice, both Gamo-chan and Yoshi immediately burst out laughing at the futility of his statement and apologized to him as they admitted he was a very funny guy. However, Nagatoro pouted. Later, Nagatoro asked Senpai why he never talks back to anyone and then proposed to improvise a manzai sketch where he should play the straight man and make a retort to her insults as she played the funny man. However, Nagatoro went too far, insulting Senpai's look and hairstyle to the point he eventually got offended. Saddened for the very first time due to having hurt his feelings, Nagatoro tried to cheer him up, telling him to hit her shoulder in the traditional manzai way to make a comeback. However, as Senpai does it, due to the tears in his eyes and the anger, he accidentally hits Nagatoro's succulent chest instead of the shoulder. Both of them blush for a moment. Then Nagatoro breaks the ice, complimenting him for finally having made a retort but jokingly stating that deep down he aimed at her breasts intentionally. The next day, Senpai washes his hands after having made an oil painting when Nagatoro approaches him on the faucet to wash her own hands after she spilled her juice. The lewd, joke-driven girl makes some erotic remarks on how it seemed like they were showering together before doing something lewd, and then started to evilly stroke his hands to increase his discomfort, until the poor boy runs away. The following day, Senpai eats his lunch in the art club room alone, when Gamo-chan and Yoshi storm into it looking for their friend. And, after noticing she wasn't there, decide to toy with Senpai, asking him if he ever touched a girl's pointy points, and then offering him to touch Gamo-chan's. Embarrassed, the boy refused, but was stopped and constricted by Yoshi, who forced his right hand over the other girl's left boob. Then Gamo-chan reassured him it was just a joke, and she actually wore anpan underneath her shirt. However, right at that moment, Nagatoro enters the room, causing her friends to leave for fear of their precious lives. Believing he actually touched Gamo-chan's boobs, the dead-eyed girl was utterly mortified, but Senpai quickly explained it was actually anpan, causing her to cheer up, laughing it off as a hilarious prank, and then she stuffed underneath her own shirt both a regular anpan and a premium one, telling him to grope them and try to guess which one was the premium. However, while Senpai was doing it with his eyes closed, the anpan over the left breast fell out of Nagatoro's shirt. Thus, when he moved his hand to check it, he actually touched Nagatoro's boob, and, finding it way softer, opened his eyes, telling her that was the premium one, thus realizing what had happened. Embarrassed, Nagatoro hits Senpai repeatedly, then they sit and eat their anpan in silence. In the following afternoon, Nagatoro drags a sofa in the art club room, saying it was from the handicrafts club room, but they didn't need it anymore, and explaining that it allowed her to do many different poses as she intended to model for him. Then, noticing Senpai was watching the baseball team training outside of the window, especially its top star Hosokawa, who is Senpai's classmate, but is likely to go pro in the next few years. Nagatoro asks Senpai if he wanted to be complimented by others just like he does, saying he needed to compliment others as well in order for that to happen, thus asking him to make her some compliments. In order to do it, Senpai admits to himself for the first time that he thought that Nagatoro had a cute face, very beautiful slim legs, and a good smell. However, he was too embarrassed to say those thoughts out loud, so he simply says that her hair is very silky, that she's very light on her feet, and also that he found her martial arts skills cool. This made Nagatoro actually blush a little. Then, as she tried to do the same for him, Nagatoro was unable to do it. Later, Senpai tries very hard to start drawing Nagatoro, but she kept lifting her skirt like a hentai protagonist a bit to tease him, and after a while, falls asleep. Watching how cute and innocent she seemed while sleeping, Senpai finally managed to do an extremely accurate painting of her. At first, he feels proud of himself for finally managing to draw the human female figure. However, he then starts to feel embarrassed, hoping Nagatoro never sees it, without realizing that she was actually already up and right behind him. Nagatoro immediately asks him to close his eyes and get ready for his reward. Senpai does as commanded, fearing another flick or worse. But instead, she kisses him on the lips with a doll, laughing that it'll take 1,000,000 years for a degenerate like him to ever kiss her. She then looks at the paint tenderly, stating that she really liked it. Nagatoro has a nightmare in which, after she called Senpai a creep repeatedly, he left her alone and hung out with Gamo-chan and Yoshi instead. After she wakes up in the art club, she finds out Senpai has covered her with a blanket in order to prevent her from catching a cold. She watches him with a cute, shy, and moved expression, finally telling him that he wasn't that much of a creep. One afternoon, Nagatoro tickles Senpai in order to prove her assumption that he was sensitive, due to the fact that he was a hopeless, closed, pervert virgin. After she did it, the virgin boy proved to be as ticklish as she expected. However, afterward, Senpai asked about her, prompting her to say she wasn't, but stating he would never find that out as he was too shy to tickle a girl. After Senpai tells her he could totally do it, feeling challenged, Nagatoro takes off her shirt shamelessly, showing the top of her swimsuit, and offers her armpit to him. However, as Senpai got close to it with her hand, Nagatoro covered both of her armpits and started to make up excuses in order not to be tickled. Later, she shows a video of a sheep getting shorn. Then, looking at Senpai's hair, Nagatoro notices that they got pretty long and sarcastically asks him how long it has been since the last time he got shorn, then offers to give him a haircut. Although Senpai is skeptical, Nagatoro swears that she was really good at cutting hair and that sometimes she also cut her big brother's hair at home. Before starting, she gets a call from her friends to join them in their class so that Gamo-chan could give her back her math notes. However, this is revealed to be a mere trick of the girls, and while she was out of the art cub room, they went inside it in order to look at their friends and Senpai's lewd love nest. However, after seeing Nagatoro's brother's razor, they decided to shave Senpai themselves, and, right when he opposed them, shouting that he promised Nagatoro he would have his hair cut by her, she comes back inside, causing her friends to run off again for fear of demolition. Moved by Senpai's statement, Nagatoro finally cuts his hair and the two share a sweet moment as he thanks her. Later that day, while walking back home, due to the heat, Nagatoro suggested taking shaved ice. However, the hidden store she knew was discovered by the world after having been featured on TV the previous day and has a massive crowd of people lined up in front of it. Nagatoro stubbornly decided they would have to wait their turn in line, prompting Senpai to shield her from people who ogled her as her shirt turned transparent and later dragging her away as she was on the verge of a heat stroke. Then he bought her some water from a vending machine, impressing and deeply moving her, which led her to dismiss the idea of waiting in line for the shaved ice cream and instead buy some convenience store ice cream just like Senpai previously told her to do. Nagatoro also composed a haiku to celebrate the moment and offered an utterly embarrassed Senpai to feed him. Later, as they were walking home, she asked Senpai to drink from his bottle of green tea and, knowing the summer break was about to start, to exchange mail contacts. Nagatoro was overjoyed after he accepted, and when he told her there was nothing special in having his line ID, she sweetened up and tenderly said that she believes otherwise. Not wanting to get too emotional, Nagatoro adds that from that point on, she would have sent him a cat sticker every time she sensed he was thinking about something lewd. After they parted ways, Senpai prepared to drink from his tea bottle but hesitated, remembering that it would have been an indirect kiss. At that moment, he received a cat sticker from Nagatoro and, turning, found that the girl was looking at him. Smiling, she jokingly called him a pervert. And thanks for joining us on another adventure, my fellow weebs. If you enjoyed this episode of Weebtoons, make sure to smash that like button and leave a comment below and subscribe to the channel.